What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. So, a couple quick addendums to last night's podcast. I should mention that you should only apply the solder to the backside of the switch, meaning not the side with the flat contact face, but the opposite side. This is the point at which the switch pokes through the leaf and is normally compressed into place. Another thing that you can do, this is the second thing, is that you do not want to do this on a high-powered switch, such as a flipper switch or an end-of-stroke switch. You should only do this on switches which are relatively low intensity, like that score motor actuator switch that I was talking about. Okay, so moving on to tonight's topic, I wanted to start talking about score motors. I'm not sure exactly when the score motor was introduced, but I do know that many games in the 1930s did not have a score motor, and I would imagine that it started to coincide with the rise in multiple types of simultaneous scoring. For example, on my 1937 game, you have two different types of lighted scoring. You have hundreds and you have thousands. There's only a single switch on the playfield, which will give you a step up on 1000. Then you have a 100-stepper, which when it reaches 900, the next step will return that stepper back to 0, but increment the thousands. Now on a game that has 10,000, 100,000, and 1 million, you have multiple things going on. Beyond that, you may also have 1,000s. And so on the playfield, you may have items which score 5,000. And if you've ever wondered how the machine can keep track of that, here's the podcast for you. The score motor is essentially, when you boil it down to its essence, a rotating mechanism that will allow for multiple scores in a single point type. Anytime the machine has to think, it's going to go to the score motor. Now, most EM logic can be handled without turning the score motor. There are only certain instances when the score motor has to be actuated, and those usually involve multipliers on a single type of scoring. So let's take my 1947 exhibit Mystery, the machine I talked about hacking up last night. That game has 1,000 scoring, 10,000 scoring, 100,000 scoring, and million scoring. It's rare that you just get 1,000 points. In that game, there are many passive bumpers, most of which score 1,000 on the initial hit. But then there are many bumpers which score 5,000 points. There are also 3 trap holes in the game, or kick-out holes rather. And these kick-out holes score a random amount, and then we'll kick the ball out. Now, the game has to think in order to score the random amount. The game also has to think in order to score 5,000 points. The game doesn't have to think in order to score 10,000 points or 100,000 points, or even 1,000,000 points. It only has to think when there are multiples of a particular score. So, taking the 5,000 as an example, the game has to actuate the 1,000 stepper 5 times. It can't be more than 5 times. It can't be less than 5 times. It has to be exactly 5 times. So there have to be 5 pulses sent to the step-up coil on the 1,000th stepper. Well, the way this works is the score motor contains several cams. When the motor turns, and this is a pretty efficient design, by the way, when the motor turns, there are, on the Mystery, 3 different cams. There's one with many teeth, there's one with fewer teeth, and then there's one that's basically just a big single tooth. So let's talk about the one with multiple teeth. That one, the teeth are spaced in such a way that they actuate a switch, and guess what that switch does? If you guess that it stepped up the 1,000th coil, you're correct. Now, it's only going to do that if other switches in the game are active at the same time. Otherwise, that switch does nothing. Then let's take the next highest switch, or cam. That cam has 2 functions. One is awarding the mystery score, and the second is to reset the machine back to a 0 state. Now, both of those functions only work when certain switches on the playfield are active or in the reset relay, which is attached to the trip bank. Once the reset relay drops out and the score motor stops turning, the game is reset. The third cam actuates a single switch. That switch pulses the kickout coil, which actually kicks out all 3 holes at the same time. If any one of those switches is misadjusted, then the game won't score. Much more likely, however, is that one of the switches in one of the controlling relays in the back box is misadjusted. When I first got the game, the switch for the kickout hole was slightly misadjusted, and that caused the kickout hole never to pulse. Most of the relays needed slight adjustment, and then the game played perfectly until I had a switch give out just recently. Still haven't fixed it. I spent all night tonight mowing the lawn. Hadn't done it for a few weeks because it's been raining every single day here in Richmond for the past several months, it feels like. So the grass was about 7 feet tall. I did get it finished, but that didn't give me time to work on the games tonight. So, tomorrow, hopefully, I will change that switch, but there's no guarantee. At any rate, the maintenance on this score motor, and we're only talking about this one game from the 40s, which is made by Exhibit Supply Company. So this is not one of the big 3 EM manufacturers of the 60s, 70s, and 50s. This is one of the big manufacturers from the 40s. And during that time, you have to remember, this is right after World War II had ended, and many things were in short supply. Oil was in short supply, copper was in short supply, all kinds of things which are needed for the manufacture and operation of a pinball machine, were not really available. And so they had to do what they could to make these machines, get them on the street, get them earning money so they could sell more games. So what they suggested, because, again, oil was not something that was readily available, was to lubricate the score motor with Vaseline. Now, Vaseline is petroleum-based, and so, similar to oil, it will lubricate to some extent. But the problem with Vaseline, as you may know or have surmised, is that over time it will harden into cement. Not really cement, but it does harden, and this happens when it's exposed to air over a period of, say, 70 years. So the fix for this is to chip all that away and then lubricate with a small amount of oil. Now, there's also a lubrication point in this particular type of motor, and we're talking about a stacked cam on top of the actual motor. A similar design was used by Gottlieb for many, many years and United, and I'll be going into that in a future episode. But in this one, there's a single lubrication point and a wick which will allow you to use oil. So, if you want your motor to run smoothly and quietly for many years to come, it is a good idea to lubricate every so often. Anytime that you tear your machine down to shop it, it's a good idea to check your score motor's movement and apply lubrication if needed. But the best thing to do is to clean off the prior lubrication before applying new lubrication. And your motor is going to, depending on the RPM and the manufacturer, whether it's a sealed motor or an exposed motor, is going to require different weights of motor oil. So it's best to research that before just pouring in any old oil that you happen to have lying around for lubricating discs or the like. Well, that's all for tonight. Thank you again for joining me. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call us on the bingo line, 724-BINGOS1. That's 724-246-4671. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter, at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at nbaldridge, or you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.